By now, you may be thinking that takeoffs are a piece of cake. And while takeoffs may seem easier than landings, some takeoffs might not always get you perfect marks from the judges. In case that's been true for you, what follows are a few of the finer points to make sure you get into the air elegantly every time. Staying in the center of the runway is an important key to good takeoffs. That way, you have maximum room on either side to allow for wind gusts, blown tires, and so on. It's also embarrassing when you have to pick the dandelions out of your landing gear after a takeoff excursion through the weeds. So, what could cause a takeoff run to go awry? There's me in my early days of flying. Oh boy, I hate it when that happens. Well, the contributing factors could be starting somewhere other than the center line of the runway, starting with the nose wheel pointed to one side, using too much or not enough right rudder to counteract that left turning tendency, and forgetting to correct for crosswinds. So, when you taxi onto the runway, first select a reference to keep in sight. You can use the runway markings like this center line stripe and also distant landmarks, if any are available, to help you maintain directional control. At the same time, take a final glance at the windsock so you're sure of the wind's speed and direction in relation to your runway. Do this for every takeoff because the wind can change very quickly, and what you knew about it a couple of minutes ago may not be true now. Now, when you've stopped on the runway, make sure that not only is your airplane aligned with the center line, but also that the nose wheel is pointed straight ahead. Since you've just finished a turn to get there, it's not uncommon for the airplane to be on the center line with the nose wheel cocked quite a bit to one side. And if you don't straighten out the nose wheel, when you add full takeoff power, it will make for a very interesting ride. Now, starting in the center of the runway is one thing. Staying there in a crosswind is entirely another matter. So when you start your takeoff roll with any crosswind, you'll hold full aileron into the wind. This would be a left crosswind in this case. This does two things for you. The raised aileron on this upwind wing prevents the wing from rising due to the crosswind. And the lowered aileron on the downwind side adds adverse yaw to keep the airplane straight, so you'll need less rudder. But you will need to hold downwind rudder to keep the airplane from weather vaning into the wind. It would be downwind this way. Now, as you accelerate and the ailerons become more effective, you'll decrease the amount of aileron you're holding into the wind. You don't want that downwind wing to lift now. And the story's the same with the rudder. As you pick up speed, you will need less of it. And now you have a crosswind on takeoff, and you want to be certain that you have flying speed as you lift off. It should be smooth, but very definite on liftoff. And that's so you don't have any chance of settling back onto the runway. Because if the airplane touches back down while you're drifting sideways, you can put some really heavy side loads on your landing gear. What about our old pal, the left turning tendency? Well, you'll require progressively smaller rudder corrections as your speed increases. That's because as your speed increases, you get more airflow over the rudder, therefore it becomes more effective. Now watch this airplane as the nose wheel lifts off the runway. Notice that as soon as the wheel comes off, the airplane drifts very strongly to the left. Why did that happen? Well, when the nose wheel is on the runway, it counteracts the left turning tendency and helps to keep you going straight. But when the nose wheel lifts off the runway, you no longer have its help. So you'll need to add more right rudder as the nose wheel comes off the runway. Now, takeoffs are the time where you want to get all the performance your engine has to give. However, when you're applying takeoff power, be gentle with your engine. Advance the throttle smoothly to maximum power. A good way to do that is to use a 3-second count from closed throttle to full open. Use 3 seconds. Also, on every takeoff, always use maximum power. If you were to use partial power, it would significantly decrease your takeoff performance and increase your takeoff roll. And keep your throttle at maximum takeoff power until at least 500 feet above the terrain. And that's for several reasons. Takeoff power gives your engine more fuel, which provides better engine cooling for when you're climbing out. And it also gives you a quicker climb above terrain for any obstructions you might have. Now, to get that full performance, make sure you keep your feet off the brakes during the takeoff run. Whew! Man, you should have saved some money on that flight bag and bought some odor eaters. Slide your heels back on the floor and make sure that the balls of your feet are on the rudder portion of the pedals, not up here on the brake portion of the pedals. And you don't want or need brakes for steering during the takeoff run. And now, with these takeoff techniques, the judges should be giving you perfect 10s every time.